Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Kamu and welcome to another video. Today we're talking about a very important subject, which is the mulligan. Because if we know what we are doing in the mulligan, this will give us a huge advantage over our opponent. So the three concepts that I want to talk about today are, first of all, the value of a single mulligan, the blacklisting, and the Mulligan sequencing. These three concepts are the most important when it comes to the mulligan. So when it comes to the value of a single mulligan, we know already that our deck has 25 cards, which consists of 15 bronze cards, 6 silver cards, and 4 golden cards. And what we can do is we can assign values to these cards. So for example, we can say that a bronze card has on average 10 points, a silver card 12, and a golden card 14 points. And then we can sum them up, right? We can multiply the amounts of cards for a given rarity with their value, and we get the complete value of our deck. For example, in this case, 278. And if we divide it by the amounts of cards overall, we get the value of the average card in our deck, in this case, 11.12. And so, for example, if we have in our hand a bronze card that has 10 points, and we know that the card that we receive is on average 11 points, then of course we should mulligan it. And that's why the rule of thumb is basically that we mulligan cards that, when played from hand, are of lower value than the average card in our deck. Here you can see a short example where the average card in our deck has 11 points, and on the left side we have the Brigade, which is only 8 points, which is lower than the average value, so we should mulligan it, while the Sultan has 14 points, which is higher than the average card, and so we should keep it. So this is basically the concept of the value of a single mulligan. And now that we know that, we can jump to the next concept, which is the blacklisting. And blacklisting basically comes from the fact that in our deck we have bronze cards, silver cards, and golden cards, and we have the opportunity of putting multiple copies, right? The maximum of 3 copies of one bronze card in our deck. And if it happens so that we get one of those in our starting hand and we mulligan it, then we don't draw the other ones, right? We don't draw the other copies of this bronze card. And so if we look at our last math example, when we have our starting hand, we have 10 cards in hand and 15 cards in the deck left. Then we have, on average, 9 bronze cards, 3 points, 6 silver cards, and 2.4 golden cards left in our deck, which means that the average value, if we assign them right, is in this case 11.1 points per card. And if it so happens that we only get 1 copy in our starting hand and we mulligan it first, and we cannot draw the additional copies of this bronze card, then we can draw less bronze cards which are of lower value, and the cards that we can draw are on average of a higher value. For example, in this case, 11.3 points per card. This has 2 implications. First of all, when it comes to deck building, we should add 3 of each type to our deck if possible, because then we increase the value of blacklisting in our mulligan. And when it comes to the mulligan, we usually mulligan copies first of bronze cards, because it will increase the value of further mulligans. So now let's come to the last very important concept of mulligans, which is the Mulligan sequencing. And what that means is basically that the sequence of your mulligans, they affect the likelihood of cards being drawn in further rounds. And what I mean by that is that a card that is mulliganed first has a higher chance of ending up at the top of your deck than a card that is mulliganed last. And if you really want to know the details about this, you can click on the description below this video. I will leave a link to a subreddit post where this is explained really well. But for now, what you really have to know is that cards that are mulliganed earlier are likelier to end up on top than the cards you mulliganed last. And what that implicates is that cards you want to summon from deck, you want to mulligan early, while cards you don't want to draw later in game, you try to mulligan late. So here's an example where on the left side we have the roadshow that we want to summon in round 1. So if we have a gold card in our hand, if we just look at Mulligan Sequencing, want to mulligan it earlier. While, for example, if we have the brigade and we know that we don't draw it through all our deck, then we don't want to see it at all because it's a weak bronze card and we want to mulligan it later. So these are basically the 3 most important concepts. First of all, the value of a mulligan, the blacklisting, and the mulligan sequence. And if we know them and our opponent doesn't, they will definitely give us a huge edge when it comes to the mulligan. And so keep them in mind and try to apply them in your own game. So now I will introduce you to a last example. Here we have a very good starting hand. In our deck we have 3 Shield Maidens, we have 3 Brokva Hunters, and we have 1 First Light. And really, if we just look at the concepts, the value, the blacklisting, and the sequencing, we know that the Shield Maidens have the lowest value. They also want to be summoned in round 1, and they are blacklistable. And so the Shield Maiden, one of the Shield Maiden, should be mulliganed first. When it comes to the second mulligan, it's not so easy. The options are First Light, Brokva Hunter, or Morgwag. And if we just look at blacklisting, we know that we can blacklist the Brokva Hunters, while we cannot blacklist the First Light. And that's why we can decide between, and should decide between, the Brokva Hunter and the Morgwag. And if we just look at these both, we can say that the Brokva Hunter is blacklistable, while we want to summon the Morgwag from deck. So according to Mulligan Sequencing, we should mulligan Morgwag first, but according to blacklisting, we should blacklist the Brokva Hunter first. And so what's left is the third concept, which is the value, and we have to say that the Brokva Hunter is of higher value when played from hand than the Morgwag, because 3 stats on the opposing side's damaging is more value than usually on your side. And that's why I think the second mulligan should be the Morgwag. And then obviously, if we don't draw any specific cards, we should mulligan the Brokva last. So this was the example. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a lot. If you want more of this content, stay tuned and subscribe to this channel. Also, if you liked it, leave a like and tell me in the comments if you have any suggestions. Maybe you want more of this, maybe you want something else. And so what's left to say is have a great day and bye.